Hello and welcome to the SC Playbook podcast over the 2026 NRL Supercoach season. I'm your host, Tim Williams, and all feels right in the world again because we're talking about NRL Supercoach again. Even better because the Ashes, it was not quite a whitewash. It was 4-1, but it was pretty dominant. We put the Poms back in their place. We're back talking some rugby league. And here to do it with me, as always, Supercoach aficionado, Max Bryden. Maxie, how are you?
Timmy, I don't know when the intro changed. I had one bad season of BBL Supercoach, and all of a sudden I've gone from an expert to an aficionado. Yeah. It's pretty rough, I reckon. But that aside, I'm not doing too bad.
All the contributors are very much held accountable, mate, as I was 2 seasons ago after a poor year. I had a bounce back year, and the same goes for you, mate. If you have a bad year or if the Spy has a bad year, you're going to know about it. The people are going to know about it. It is bloody good to be back on deck. It's very early on in the season, mate. We're recording the first episode in mid-January. We haven't got our Supercoach nerd on just yet. Well, we have. I've done iterations of my team. A lot of different sort of things have happened to this point, but we're just getting a vibe of Supercoach. We wanted to scratch the little itch of Supercoaches out there. The team picker was obviously released just before Christmas. The official Supercoach game launches to the public. It's generally at around about Australia Day each year at the back end of January, so I knew that I wanted to get into it. You were keen to get into it, so here we are, mate. How's the off-season been, mate? Full of cricket, I dare say?
Oh, heaps of cricket, mate. Plenty of cricket. It's been good fun. Ashes summers are just different, aren't they? Like, it's just all encompassing. There's so many opinions, so many podcasts, so much content. Love my Big Bash as well. Big Bash has been great this season too, mate. So it's been good fun. Plenty going on at the Tigers as well, which keeps things pretty spicy behind the scenes. Not quite sure who's going to be leading the club.
Finals footy this year or not?
Oh, always, mate. Yeah, I think this year is our year. I've been saying that for over a decade, but I feel like this year's our year. But no, man, it's been good. It's been busy. What about yourself?
Yeah, good. I love how, like, when you talk about your clubs, this year's our year. You talk about a premiership with the Tigers. We're playing finals. It's our year. It's our year to play finals.
Finals will be good, mate. Honestly, I'll take finals.
Maxie, I've been good, but there's a bloke in this studio who's been better than I have. Matty the Barley Boy. Who, mate, you nearly took up official residency over there. You spent that much time there over the off-season.
Yeah, I was there for 23 days, and that was after I was here for 2 weeks, and I was in Thailand for a week with you, actually, Timmy. So, 30 days in Southeast Asia in the past roughly 45 days. So, yeah, a bit of reality hit yesterday when we were sitting in that potty all day. Well, it wasn't all day. It was a 2-hour podcast yesterday, but it felt long because I haven't really been doing much work. But yeah, no, it was I'm refreshed and recharged, put it that way.
23 days in Bali is just so rugby league.
Yeah, it is.
I didn't even move either. I just stayed in Canggu the whole time.
Yeah.
How good. 23
days in Bali, a week in Thailand, not long before that. Like, if that doesn't freshen you up and you feel like lethargic coming into the new season, just get a new job.
It's time for change jobs, yeah. But thankfully for everyone and myself, I'm ready to go.
Guys, on today's show, we're going to be looking at what we learned from the 2025 NRL Supercoach season, the lessons we took from last year to take into the new campaign. Maxie is going to drop his undervalued players to start the season based on a bunch of different factors there. I'm going to drop my round one must-haves, the people you have to have in your team to start the season, in my opinion. Maxie's going to play devil's advocate and try and shoot them down. I don't know if you'll be able to, mate, but you're going to do your best. For myself last season, Maxie, 560th, had a good end to the year. Pretty solid throughout the year, and made a bit of a flurry late. Banked some trades. We all know my slow, safe approach to Supercoach, that it's worked for me year in, year out, unless it's the year of 2024. I stuck with it, got a good result. How'd you end up?
I think I finished somewhere between 1,600 and 1,800. I sort of deleted the app by the time we got around 27.
Because you had no trades.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of people in the Supercoach Playbook community would have followed my progress. I got as high as 203rd-ish with about sort of 5 or 6 weeks to go. Came onto this podcast, had some very big calls to make about how you weren't going to run me down. But unfortunately, mate, I got Reece Walshed. He was the hot hand of all hot hands to finish the season. 112 average after State of Origin, if you don't mind. And that really was sort of the difference between a really, really great finish and a good finish. Don't get me wrong, top 2K was great. But it's funny because I think, you sit there and you look at your team at the end of the year, you've got so many injured dudes, you just desperate to try and put 18 blokes out there. And I realised if I just had that one guy, if I just had Mr. Walsh in my team, I still would have clung to like a top 400 finish and beaten you. So, yeah, but mate, it was a good year, learned plenty, and I can't wait to share it all with everyone.
I thought you'd have come in here this year, and like I thought that running you down would have wiped that smugness off your dial, but no, it's could have done this, could have done that.
We go again, mate.
One
trade.
I could have started the year with Herbie Farnworth and I would have won Supercoach, but here we are. So Herbie could have not done his hammy against the Warriors in round 22 or whatever it was, and I probably would have finished about 10,000th, but here we are. So guys, what is in store at SC Playbook in 2026? Some big announcements to come over the next few weeks as the platform continues to expand and grow. That should get super coaches out there very excited. There's things we've never done before, new collaborations with some of the best in the business. We're also going to be ramping up our subscription content to add more and more value for subscribers in 2026. Obviously, getting you access to tons of premium articles on the website each and every week of the preseason and throughout the year. Subscriber podcast questions, the unlimited league prize money of over $1,000 and plenty more. We're also going to be expanding with additional subscriber podcasts this season, starting in the next couple of weeks. And if you've been living under a rock in the SC Playbook universe, I suppose, we've expanded over the last few months to include EPL, NBA, and the NFL Supercoach, along with our cricket content. AFL is also going to be launching in January with studio-recorded podcasts. We've got a gun team lined up for that one with daily articles and all the good gear you're used to at SC Playbook. Very important to note, guys, all of these new sports, they've been housed on standalone channels on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all the social media channels. They're all by themselves. They're not coming through the one main feed. So if you're into those sports, go and check those out and follow along. You can subscribe to SC Playbook for less than $2 per week. Head to scplaybook.com.au and click subscribe in the menu. And just lastly, before we get into our learnings from last year, Maxie, we are on the lookout for sponsors to partner up with SC Playbook in 2026. So if you think your business would like to link up with us this year, flick us an email at supercoachplaybook@gmail.com. That is full word Supercoach, and we can pass on the details of what that might look like and we can get down to business. But speaking of getting down to business, Maxie, I'll shut up. 2025 season, I'll start with you and we'll bounce off one for one. What were your major takes from it? And before we get stuck into that, you went very hard on cash generation last year and building a maximum squad value. It was a bit of an experiment of sorts. You'd seen it work for people in years prior and you said, no, I'm going to focus on cash generation. And at a point of the season, it generally happens around 8, 9, 10, 11, where people start to make that shift from focusing their trades on the low break-evens and generating cash to focusing on points and maximising that in teams. You went hard on cash. What did you make of that experiment?
It was actually the last 2 years in a row now that I sort of had this approach. So learning like a fair bit from it, I still reckon it's pretty good. I think the first year I did it, I ended up with a finish in maybe 5,000 spot after getting very close to the top 2K after my worst ever start. So it essentially came from the clouds because of my team value and the fact I had so many guns that were giving me a lot of depth. Last year, had a really good starting team. I think that's sort of one of the things I learned right is like if you start well, even if your ranking's not great, if you've got all the right players, you're able to save trades. That way you're going to end up like going
if you get your round one team nailed, and in particular cheapies, we'll say it time and time again this preseason, but
super important.
You're setting yourself up for success. It can take some chasing if you get the wrong cheapies early.
Yeah, 100%. But look, I think where team value came up good for me and probably where it just came that little bit short was having greater depth to turn to and just more guns to kind of patch up for the lack of trades. Having more team value, it equates to holding higher value players throughout your team. So if someone does go down, you're able to paper over that cracks where someone might have to trade out a gun in order to sort of keep the game going. That was kind of my strategy. Unfortunately, there was just so many injuries to end last year. I went from having 21, 22 really solid players. And when we had that amazing conversation last year when I came on here full of hot air, it was because I knew that you were looking to get in blokes that I already owned and that I was sort of ahead of the curve. But ultimately, that's sort of where it fell short. There was sort of too many injuries. I still think it's the way to go. There was a point last year, I forget the name of the team, but I've never seen anything like it. The team value was like $17 million and they ended up, I think, finishing in the top 3 positions there. And they should have won. I think they stuffed up the captaincy a few times. I forget the team name. People will know who I'm talking about. But seeing a team like that and someone up the top, again, just reiterated to me that I think that there's really something to it. So it's going to be something I'm going to do again this year.
Yeah, and as you said, there was a time and place when you were getting very up and about. And to be fair, I've also, the week I passed you about around 25 or 26, I've never clipped something up for social media quicker in my entire life.
As is your right.
Yeah, as is my right. There was a point where you were sitting pretty. As I said, you're about 200, maybe 7 or 8 weeks out. And you had a deep squad and, you thought you were unbreakable. And probably a small part of me was like, oh, shit, he's looking good. I'm going to do it tough to catch him. There were a lot of injuries. Mm-hmm. Restings came, all that sort of stuff that I preach that sometimes it happens. In 2024, it didn't happen and it can backfire. If you say you're going to go the similar approach of just max squad value, do you do anything differently or do you just sort of hope that the carnage in 2026 at the end of the season isn't as bad as what we saw this year?
It's tough. I think you got to sort of take each season on its merit and not lean too heavily into the things that you've done in the past. But I think as long as you're discerning, as long as you're choosing cheapies or mid-ranges for the right reasons, that they've got a change in role that's going to last for a significant amount of time because someone's got injured, that they've earned a starting job because they're just better. I think probably the one thing that I'm a little bit smaller on this year is more so strength of schedule and runs. So I think in the past, and a lot of people have always played this, particularly in the CTW position, you're looking for a team who've got a run of 4 or 5 games against lowly ranked teams and thinking yep, this is the time I'm going to jump on because they're going to make money, they're going to score points, hallelujah, this is really good. I think that was probably just the thing that we've noticed probably about halfway through last season, and it's probably been true for the last 2 seasons. There's so many good base and power CTWs these days that they're kind of draw proof, and frankly, all of the best CTWs are those guys. They are the base and power freaks who are going to get you 55 in a bad week and 120 in a good one. So I think that's probably the change now where I'd no longer look to generate cash by downgrading to guys who have got good runs and hoping that they'll sort of bridge the gap. I think CTW is sort of a position where you just got to find your way to those big names and, hope they don't make Origin and or get injured, basically. Yeah,
and that's it, mate. Like you talk about what we learned from last year and as we adapt as super coaches, but it is the changing nature of positions that do tend to change year in, year out. Like the scoring systems don't tend to change too often or too dramatically at all in Supercoach, which is good. I think they've got it pretty close to the mark. But the CT dubs, as you said, like a few years ago, Brian Toto was just the must-have. Yeah. And he's still a good Supercoach player, don't get me wrong, but
now there's like 6 Brian Totos.
Herbie, Kiraz, these sorts of blokes, Cavaliero, Lomax, they've just essentially surpassed him. It's not to say that Toto won't match them, but in a position that was once volatile in Supercoach in recent years, and for a while now, it's just not. It's not if you get the right players. Yeah. And there is probably a tier of, I don't know, maybe it is 6 to 8 sort of blokes that are pretty reliable with their base and power. And the other one is front row, that last year we just, it turned on its head. What's always been a traditionally boring position of 65 to 70 point averaging players max. Last year was the season, and from like round 1 of Terrell May, Payne Haas, so many different blokes there, like Tino Malawi, who 2RF only this year, I think. 2RF only this year.
We had guys like Keon, who when they got moved into the front row, they were massive, all that kind of thing. Certainly something that I'm got a goal to set myself this year to teach you. Not teach you, right, but what I would love to hear more from your vernacular. If you don't know this, Tim essentially taught me Supercoach 6 years ago. I was like you, just listening to podcasts, learning this game for the very first time. Now I'm here in the bright lights. But I think the rise of the power stats and the prominence of the power stats is directly correlated to the rise of the front row forward last year. I think everyone knows now just how overweighted the power stats are within the context of Supercoach. Like tries are worth 17 points, but if you get like 4 offloads, like that's the same as a try, right? Breaking tackles, like even though it's pretty subjective sometimes in the scoring, like those guys who, it might just be 10 runs a game, but if you do 10 like 8-meter run games or 7-meter runs, that's 7 points. Yeah. But if you're breaking tackles, you've got those power stats. Like that's really kind of the key to Supercoach and these great runs. We saw it from Haas. He lifted his power and that lifted his overall game. We saw May, just incredible power stats. Like these guys, I really think that on this show you've spoken and always looked really, really hard at base. And I think that that's kind of the traditional thing. But I feel like the evolution
power.
is falling in love with the base and power stats.
Yeah,
The base and
friggin'
power
oath.
averages, the base and power point per minutes. Like, that's the kind of thing that I think I would love to hear more of from you in 2025.
All right, mate, I'll do that for you, Max.
Thanks, appreciate it.
I won't keep it all to myself now. But, and base and power, you sort of alluded to it there, but for sort of the people newer to Supercoach, we're talking offloads and tackle bus, essentially.
Yep.
Base stats, your runs and your tackles. When we talk about base each week, it's literally your points accumulated from hit-ups, tackles, minus your missed tackles is your base, but power goes that one further, and this is where your Herbie, Kiraz, these types come into it. And we're going to be doing a series for beginners in coming weeks to put it out there for first timers, not even only for first timers, and we're going to talk about there's a lot of terms in Supercoach, break-evens, base, power, all these sorts of stuff that we'll talk about regularly on the show. We're going to put it together in a fun little manner, potentially with some others as well, and help you learn Supercoach. As I said, even if you've been playing for a year or two, there's things like, we'll touch on loopholing and vice-captaincy loopholing and what all this is as well to get you in tip-top, as a ship-shaped tip-top condition for round one. What else you got there, mate?
Mate, I got a couple. One which I've dubbed, and there'll be a huge article on the website about this. It's called the Siwa Wong Rule. Now, aptly named because...
Don't listen to Guru?
Well, no, because I like Guru, mate. I know what you say about him, but I think he's all right. The Siwa Wong Rule. Now, he started the season in very red-hot fashion for the Sydney Roosters, as you mentioned last year. He was an under-the-radar cheap. He wasn't even sure if he was going to make their starting side, but he did, and he went really well. His base and power stats by the time he was in round 5 were one of the best in the competition, and he was literally coming off the back of a score of 120 across the ditch against the Wires. Everyone flocked to him, including myself. But the thing that happened the very next week was Chad Townsend at halfback getting dropped. And I think it was young Hugo Savala came in for the Sydney Roosters. Now, you might think that for Siwa Wong, he had shown what he was going to be for the rest of the season, but changes to the spine change everything you think you know about how teams score, how teams attack, and how certain players play. It does always come back to how dudes go with other dudes for me. But the Siwa Wong rule for me is that if you think you're seeing something, if you think you're seeing a trend, but then there's a change in the spine, and there was several versions of this that happened throughout the
Kieran
season.
Foran and Dave Fafita was always a great one. When Foz and Fafita were together, Fafita was just a well beater. Without him, everything changed.
But even Drinky with Jackson Purdue versus Drinky with the other bloke up there, Clifford, who played halfback for the Cows. If things change in the spine, then you need to reassess what you think you know about the players. So that's the Siwa Wong rule.
Like it.
Yeah. Do you want more?
I'll jump into one, mate.
Okay.
I'll probably touch on mine a little bit briefer, and I'll go a little bit more in depth about the strategic side of things in coming episodes, because we're going to touch on a few players at the back end of this show that Max has found that are undervalued. But one that I did want to touch on is the flex rule came in last season, where your lowest scoring player drops out. Instead of a 17-man starting squad, you have 18. And the big thing about this, Maxi, meant that vice-captaincy loopholing came into play far more frequently. And we sort of suspected that it would at the start of last year. And I'd ask, yourself, Spy, Guru, these sorts of blokes, how many times we think we'd loop last year. I think we all were pretty close to the mark of 4, 5, 6. And it ended up being about that. For some people, probably a few more. It just brought the opportunity to loop in a lot more often last year than not. What else have you got?
Mate, the next one that I just had is the ICAT rule. Another bloke who came out, I think historically he was averaging between sort of 35 and 45, and most people had sort of pegged him as a great player, but not necessarily a great Supercoach player. And he really turned that on his head. He was one of the great cheapies. For the season, he touched almost a 70-point average. He was extremely valuable player throughout the bye periods as well. He was winning people draft comps as well because he was taken so late. So the ICAT rule, it's just that young players can get better. And there's going to be, often people get sort of, circled in that you are this type of player and this is your ceiling and this is how good you are going to be. But young dudes can get better. And there's a certain guy over the Warriors that I'm pretty keen on who I'm going to apply that logic to this year.
Tell you what, we might need to do a standalone episode for beginners as well, of all the abbreviations of names as well, because in Supercoach, my brother, middle brother, Sam, pays me out about it all the time when I refer to these players. He goes, I didn't know you're best mates with AJ and A-Ray and all these sorts of blokes. I'm like, it must be hard listening new to the game. Like, who are these people? And in that case, Isaiah Katoa up at the Dolphins.
Correct.
But a separate series on name abbreviations within Supercoach. Actually, just the other one for me, and I think I want to get more into depth as the pre-season goes on here, but because I had an ordinary 2024 Supercoach season, it was more, I learned a lot from that season, and it was that year I didn't adjust well to the new bye period. And that was your best 13 scoring players, and that just flipped Supercoach on its head for overall players and what we'd done for many, many years. And thankfully I did adapt to it well enough last year, but it was just reinforced that you don't need to max out on players around those 3 major bye rounds. You get your 13 best scorers, and I think the first year I tried to have sort of 15, 16, and all my bad ones would drop out, and I held a few, absolute bang average Supercoach players through that period.
You can say it, mate. Morgan Smithies.
Yeah, I've given him a lot of stick, and I really like the bloke, and he's a good footballer. I've given him a lot on this show over the last 2 years because of his Supercoach output during that period for me. But yeah, so it's basically that instead of trying to max out at 15, 16 players for that period, if it happens naturally and the right players and the right guns are falling, sweet. It's not to say you can't, but you can get away with 10 or 11 players on those weeks if it means you're keeping a few guns that don't have as good a buy coverage. So that's one that I learned. Anything else to add there?
Man, just the final one for me was just the Reece Walsh rule. I mentioned before just that average that he had post-Origin, 112. Lots of people sitting there probably thinking very fondly of it. Unfortunately, I'm not one of them. And the learning here for me was I used my final trade on Adam Dwayhe. You might have heard of him. Incredibly beautiful halfback for the greatest team in the NRL. But it was basically, it came down to a trade between Adam and Reece. And I chose Adam because of a little bit of vibes, but I also wanted someone in the positions that he had last year. And when I reflect on it, Walsh was the obvious play because there was 1 week that I had identified of the final 3 or 4 of the season that I could, if I wanted to, skip Adam Dewey. But Reece Walsh was a very obvious vice captain or captain choice in all of those weeks. And I didn't weight the importance of captaincy enough when making my decision when it came to guns. So just a little bit of a learning for me. It's a little bit niche, but certainly the Reece Walsh will be definitely to prioritise owning guys that I want to captain. Yeah, I love that. And that goes into the early stage of the season as well. And this is one that we're recording Biz and Break Even this week as well. I'll chat about it with Guru, but it's the early parts of the season. We've known this for a long time, that attacking players, they don't have their ceilings early on for a number of reasons, which I'll get into later. But with the rise of some of these front rowers who do tend to score well across the season, sometimes even better early on, like Payne Haas averages 90 odd plus in the first 5 or 6 rounds last year. They're just a safe captaincy option early, whereas Cleary and Hines and these sorts of blokes aren't as much. Maddie, the water boy, I've enjoyed your progressive journey across Supercoach in recent years. 2 years ago, you started 3 years ago and you played bits and pieces, but then got over it. 2 years ago, you really got into it. Last year, you went full throttle.
Yep.
And you really was head down, bum up sort of stuff. What do you take from I'd say about your 3rd year of Supercoaching? Yeah,
and obviously you guys are mostly talking about Supercoach trends, blah blah. Like my learnings, I guess, are coming purely from a selfish, tactical, position. So something that that might be obvious to some, that or might not be. But my biggest thing last year that I did was my stubbornness or unwillingness to bring in someone or drop someone. Like, for example, if it was round 8 and they had Origin in 3 or 4 weeks, I'd stay away from them. But then it'd get to round 11 and that particular player might have got 80, 90, 100. And I did that all year. Like, if someone had a bye in 2 weeks, I'd avoid them. And then the other way, I was very stubborn with that. But then I was also just stubborn with other selections. Like, I dropped Ponga way too late. I didn't bring Teddy in when I should have. I didn't bring Reece Walsh in at all. I what's the word? I was pretty unwilling to budge on what I was thinking. So I guess I just got to be a little more flexible this year. But that's kind of second. The first one is the buy and the Origin thing. Like, if I think a guy's going to average 80 in 3 weeks, even if he's going to play Origin and might miss a few weeks, just pull the trigger. So that was my main thing last year.
No, I like it, mate. And there'll be, I said, plenty more to come across the preseason there. Maxi, you've got a list of undervalued players, and this will tease a little bit of a yarn that's coming on side, I'd imagine, this week. We're going to go through position by position. I'm not going to go deep diving into them at this stage. We'll be deep diving into positions and clubs and all that across the preseason and do the dirty stuff there. But a few of the ones that have caught your eye, and I suppose firstly a few factors that have come into consideration when you're deeming these players as undervalued?
Yeah, so look, I think there's sort of two main things that will determine if someone is undervalued. One will be if they've suffered any injuries, any HIAs within a game. So, for example, you might be looking at a guy and he's got a whole bunch of 80-minute games and then he's got a random 7-minute game in there. That's the score that he records in that injured game will still count towards his overall score, which will count towards his overall price. But you kind of look at what his true value is when you remove the injury game.
Yep.
The other factor is just role. So it might just be combinations on the field. It might be extra minutes. It might be a positional change as well. So what I like to do in the preseason is keep a mental note throughout the season of any particular changes of note that I'm focused on for the next year. And then also just pick up on vibe. Like you might also hear other people talking about, oh, this guy, don't you remember he got injured 3 times? You sort of look at the averaging, realize that you might be able to find 10 points of value on a guy. And when you're talking about 10 points of value, that's like $100,000 that they might be underpriced, that if you pick him up, you can spend that somewhere else in your squad.
Yeah. No, very good, mate. So let's go from the top. And before I forget it, Rando and I did do a live reaction to the Team Picker podcast, well, which is a bit of fun. We put a squad together. So go and check that one out, obviously, on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Maxi, start at the top, hookers.
I made 2 names for you. The first one is Jake Simpkin from the Manly Warringah Sea Eagles via the greatest club in the NRL. So last year he averaged 43, but most of that was coming off the bench. His average when he started was 61.1, so almost 20 points of value there for Jake Simpkin, who most are forecasting will get the starting job at Manly this year and be pretty unchallenged in that role. The next guy is Api Coruscant, now a guy that I absolutely love. Averaged 55 on the season, but when you look at his 80-minute games, that average jumps up to 71. So a huge amount of value. No one's talking about Api this preseason, but also just being the backup goal kicker to quite an injury-prone player in Adam Dewey. That's hot stuff.
Yeah, because obviously when Talon De Silva departed, like for the back end, certainly for the last 5 rounds of the year, Api Coruscant played 80-minute games. So if it is an 80-minute role for him, he becomes a genuine option. And look, hooker's notoriously a bludgeon of a position in a spot you don't want to spend too much time on. So if you can find, honestly, a 50 to 55 averaging player for the first 5 to 10 rounds while you're dealing with other headaches, you're laughing.
Yeah.
All right, front row forward.
Mate, got a few here. So the first guy is Keano. This one's obvious. Season average of 68, but when you look at just his games in the front row, it's 77.5, which is very, very, very good. Jamin Jolliffe, one of my absolute draft heroes. He's a real deep cut. Plays for the Gold Coast Titans, for those not aware. Season average of 51, but when you look at his minutes and those games that he played over 50, that average jumps up to 62.7. And particularly with Regan Campbell-Gillard gone, you're going to expect big minutes from the big man up there. So a bit of a sleeper. And Stefano. Now, we could go all day about this man. He's an ex-Tiger that I don't like because he left us in bad terms. But season average of 53. But you can really look at his season in a number of different ways. So in games under 40 minutes, he averaged 42. In games over 40 minutes, that average jumps 15 points to 57.7. After Origin, he went on an absolute tear and averaged just under 65. And in NRL finals, when it was his time to shine, he averaged 69. So you always know with Bellamy that he's probably going to be resting these dudes because he doesn't really care about Supercoach. He cares about winning grand finals. But seriously, if he can show a version of the post-Origin self throughout the season, then there's 10 points of value for Big Steph and potentially more.
Yeah, and the other thing with Stefano's got 2 tries last season. He's a front rower. They don't necessarily get over the line too often. But when you're running off Harry Grant, I expect that number to grow this season. Keon at front row forward only this year as well as it stands. The Supercoach positions, those over at Supercoach HQ, the overlords, they will update positions close to the season. But when they put the team picker out or when they launch the initial one, they can't remove positions. So they played it cautiously, which is fair, but they can add them as we go. Maxi, 2RF.
So one guy that I was really hoping would get Jewel to start the season, but he's been robbed. Tallis Duncan from the Bunnies. A season average last year of 61. He was really one of the breakout stars of the competition, particularly after about round 9. But you look at his games just in the second row, and that average jumps to 70.7. I can actually see Matty's table lifting up over there. The next guy is Jermaine McEwen from the Newcastle Knights, expected to win the starting job with Kai Pearce-Paul having departed to the greatest club in the NRL NRL. His average for the season, Jermaine, was 42. When you look at those starts at the end of the season, 58.2. So almost 16 points of value. I dare say he's going to be in a lot of starting teams.
Yeah, a massive on McEwen. I've done on the SC Playbook website my predicted 17 for every club in the NRL with analysis on that one, and I got to the Knights. Could be in for a tough year unless they can get some off-season forward recruits, because they are light on this season. And, you know, a bloke I know you've got him on your draft side so far, Trey Mooney, like he could walk into minutes just because they're so light on with so many departures this season. But Jermaine McEwen, I think you're right. He could very easily play an 80-minute role. He played 80 minutes in the back end of the year for when Dylan Lucas was out, so I like him.
Yeah, nice. There will be also a mention of Trey Mooney in the article, but baby, I'm excited.
Oh, aren't you ever? I spoke to your pre-show. Halfback.
I'll give you two names here. So the first guy, Jerome Hughes, injured 3 times in games last year, which sucked for the Melbourne Storm, but for Supercoach, it's actually pretty handy. So season average was 65. We know this guy walks in a 70-plus average every season. When you take out those injury games, it was almost 74. So almost 9 points of value there. Look, we don't know what's going to happen with his new second-row partner down at the Storm this season, but very, very undervalued Jerome Hughes to start the year. And the next guy, Adam Doueihi. Season average of 57. He played in the halves, I think it was 4 times last year, and his average jumped up to 73.5. We've even gone deeper though. If you just look at his games throughout his career, at all stops, in the halves, either at 5/8 or halfback, his career average is 70.4. So you're getting 13 points of value, and this is now a guy who's getting a full preseason there. Came out recently and basically said that he's looking like the starting halfback, partnership with Jerome Luai. I mean, giddy up.
Yeah, Jerome Hughes is a very fascinating one. Average 65 last season, 82 the year before, 17 short of the year prior, and his lowest average in a number of years as a result of those injuries, as you said, Maxi, one that I'll be watching. And Adam Doueihi, massive fan of him, and he's going to be one of my biggest preseason watchers. My only knock, and it could change come round 1, but I don't think it will, he's only at halfback. I would have loved him at 5'8", because 5'8" looks like a pretty ordinary position again this year, at least to start the season, till we see how things unfold. But around the halfback position, I've got a certain parter of C's that's on my agenda that's currently in my team. So more on him later in the season, pre-season. 5'8", yuck. What's this? What are you doing here?
Yeah, one name for you. I shared a screenshot from my team picker in the chat recently and got a little bit of shtick for this.
Rightly
but,
so.
Man, I think that the numbers will do the talking here. So, of course, I'm talking about the Jeroman Empire overlord himself, Jerome Luai. Season average last year of 48. And he's a guy when you talk about how dudes go with other dudes, right?
Yeah.
You look at his season in 2. It was when he was playing halfback with Galvin in the team, and then when Galvin left. And when Galvin left, he went on a very sneaky, solid run of averaging 60.27. So 12 points better with Galvin gone from the team than he's currently priced at. So he's a bit of a sneaky one under the radar. Of course, the Tigers have got the bye to start the season, so you can't pick all of them as much as I'd like to. But yeah, I think Jerome should get serious consideration in 5/8.
You know what? Round 1, not that you'd start with too many, but like say on some obscure reason you were keen on Tigers players to start the season, the fact that there's a round 1 bye, it'll just keep people away. So you get a free look at their players because they won't change in price to round 4, but I don't mind it. Like the early buys and going with players for them because people avoid as that result. At CT, bad to pass on, hard pass from me and Jerome Luai, but who have you got at CT Dub?
Okay, well, we might have to pick that up
Here
later.
we go.
Now, this I couldn't have the first podcast of the NRL season and not talk about my favourite guy. I wish he was at the Tigers. That's how much I love him. It's filthy Phil Sammy. It had to be, right? Season average of 64. Mate, I must have harped on about this bloke in the WhatsApp every single week for about 3 months before people finally bought him and he got hurt, which sucked. But it's the move to the wing. So this guy started the season. He was being named at centre. He was playing on the right wing. He's a base and power beast. We know that. But when he moved to the left wing, he started scoring tries because that's how the Gold Coast Titans scored tries. Season average on the left wing alone, which basically happened after Origin 3, was 71.4, which is certifiably like gun status, right? Like that's almost top 5 in position. And he's priced 7 points under at 64. Who knows how the Titans are going to line up? He's going to be a centre, be a winger. They've got rid of AKP. They've got rid of Brian Kelly. But there's a good player in Phil Sammy.
There's a very good player in Phil Sammy. I think he's one of the most underrated footballers in the comp. Would you like to know my issue with Phil Sammy for Supercoach?
Please.
He'll start round 1 on the left wing. By round 2, he'll be on the right wing. Round 3, he'll be left centre. Round 4, right centre. And then by round 5, he'll be dropped. And then by round 6, he'll be back on the left wing.
New coach this year, mate. New year, new feel.
We'll see. I have no faith in the Titans. However, I agree with the sentiments that he's a bloody good footballer. And he's an underrated Supercoach and NRL player, but they're just a basket case. Hopefully they sort themselves out this year under a new regime. And to wrap it up, at fullback, and this is going to be a huge talking point all preseason, one that I am going to have him in and out of my team. Probably going to end up out. Currently in it. Who we got?
Talking about the plumber, Reece Walsh.
Yeah, the plumber.
It had to be. So season average of 85. That's how many times I've cried since not trading him in to end the season as well. But as I've mentioned a few times, the post-origin average of 112 is just absolutely neck level. And even when you put him in crunch time, you put him in the most difficult arena there is in finals football, the average jumped again to 122. All of the talk at Brisbane to start the season last year was they've brought in Ben Hunt, and is there too many chefs in the kitchen? Where are they going to fit Ezra Mam? The Brisbane Broncos team that we saw in the finals with basically all of these guys back on the paddock, it was Reece's team. I don't even know how many of those games he actually had goal kicking in. It wouldn't have been a huge jump to his average, but this guy just did it with his feet. He did it with his power game as well. He was breaking tackles for fun, offloading, setting up tries. It's crazy to think that I think he's the second most expensive player in the game and he could be undervalued. Yeah. But I think Reece Walsh is undervalued.
Yeah, I'm torn because it's very rare that you'd pay up for a player at fullback to start the season. You wait for a price drop. They tend to start slower and average less, but he's a freak.
It's Reece Walsh.
He's a freak, and he's not going to start the season conservatively. That's not his brand. That's not the Broncos' brand, so that's what I'm going to be umming and ahhing with all pre-season. Mate, my must-haves for the season, and I've only got a few of them on this list, and if you can play devil's advocate, do your best, give us your worst. Tell me why we shouldn't go any of these players. But Dave Fafita at $485,000 at the South Sydney Rabbitohs under Wayne Bennett. He averaged 50 points in 48 minutes last season due to unhappy at the club, injuries, didn't look like he wanted to be out there at times. The 2 seasons prior, he averaged 77 and 82. If he starts, he's an absolute must, mate. Even if he came off the bench, I'd be tempted because I think he'll be starting sooner rather than later. I expect him to start round 1 and play probably a 60 to 65 minute role under Bennett. Could be more, but they have so many forwards, the Bunnies, he probably doesn't need to play more than that. Talk me out of it if you can.
2 reasons.
Yep.
So 1, ignoring how much I've just glazed Tallis Duncan. Mm-hmm. When was the last time a South second rower was Supercoach relevant? Right? Like, it's just not their shape. It's just not their DNA. There's a reason Alex Johnson is the leading try scorer. Yeah. It's because they play out the back. He is going to be the world's biggest decoy runner. Like, literally. And I think, yes, he's a good player, but like, how many attacking stats and opportunities is he actually going to get when you can just go to Latrell out the back? The second part of that is just minutes as well. Like, this guy's, he's going to have a good PPM, there's no doubt about it. He's probably unders at his price, but how many minutes is he actually going to get? They've just signed Adam Elliott. They've got more forwards.
It's a joke.
Yeah, you've got clubs like the Newcastle Knights just being like, hello, please, just 1 or 2 of them would be great. Mind you, they just release Adam Elliott. But yeah, I think those are the 2 things that count against him, minutes and the fact that South second row is right. They're not really it.
No, it's a very valid point. They do. They love the sweeper out the back, hitting the winger and all of that, especially when you add that, it'll be Jai Gray hitting Latrell Mitchell at centre this year, by the looks of it, with Latrell likely to start at centre. He'll still be in my team, but the notion of starting him even if he's off the bench with minutes of concern, there'll be an issue there. So I probably do need him starting. So fair points, Maxi. Next on my list, Keano Kini, coming back from injury, $495,000. He averaged 45 points in just 51 minutes per game last season. In his 3 80-minute games, he averaged 71.6 points per game, which is in line with that average in 2024. You can see what he's done for the Kiwis in recent years when on the field. He's just getting better and better. I think you have to have Keano Kini round 1.
This is very hard because Guru wasn't the only bloke who drafted this guy in the first round last year.
Oh, no.
I absolutely love him. But if I have to play devil's advocate, I'll give you 3 things, and these are just alternatives, right? I feel like there's a lot of undervalued guys at the fullback position who could potentially take on Kini when it comes to how much they're going to improve based on their current price, right? So the first guy, Trey Fuller, he's only 65K more. He only played 4 games last year, but he averaged 88, which is just insane. Like, the kid's a footballer, right? Like, to quote Locker. You could pay a little bit more and take him on with a Fuller. The next guy, only 110K more, right? Like, that's effectively 10 points. But Kalen Ponga, like, he's right there for the taking as well, undervalued off the back of an injury-impacted season and a poor season. But I really do think, as much as the forwards are going to hurt them next year, like, they've got a pretty exciting team. They're going to play, I think, a bit of Benji ball up there next year. They're going to be very fun to watch, and I think Ponga can lift from his price. Third guy, Jai Gray, similar price. He averaged 65 at games at fullback last year, so he's unders. I think he's priced around a 57. Top 8 team, so he's playing probably in a better team, the Rabbitohs. Maybe top 8's controversial, but they'll be a better team than they were last year. Is his ceiling higher, playing off the back of this a great pack and with great players around him? So, yeah.
I mean, look at Jai Gray. They're great examples when he's sweeping out the back there, and he's got AJ Long and he's got Latrell Short. Like you mentioned, the Dave Fafita is going to be the world's biggest, decoy. Well, Latrell's probably the world's biggest centre decoy of all time when he's hitting wide to AJ. So, yeah, I said Trey Fuller, he's on my radar. Kalen Ponga's massively on my radar. I think there is good value in the fullback position, which is what makes me questionable about the Reece Walsh starting position. I think I'll almost certainly have a fullback in my flex again for the reasons you just mentioned. So, I like it, mate. And then just the other three, which you don't really need to go into, but Ethan Sanders at 245K, Jonah Pezzett at 235K, and Dan Atkinson at 235K. I'm very likely to be starting with 2 of the 3 of these guys. Obviously, a lot can happen throughout the preseason, different team changes, combinations, all sorts of things, but they're bargains to me who look like they should get a decent run early on and make some good cash. 2
words to talk you out of this one. Tom Duffy. Right? He suckered so many people in last year, myself included, of the promise of potential. But what do we know about the halfback position, right? Like, these guys who play there are super low floor. Right, like, they're not making tackles, they're not making runs. They really need attacking stats in order to average well, and they're going to need to average well to make money. Otherwise, you're just going to end up stalling with these guys. So you've got 3 really talented players there: Atkinson, Pezzett, and Sanders. But you're going to need a fair bit to go your way. And are you willing to roll the dice on that in a position as important as halfback? We've already spoken in this show about guys like Adam Dewey. There's other halfback options who are undervalued: Jerome Hughes, Dylan Brown. That's before you even get to the genuine guns. Yeah. So do you really want to lock up a cheapie in a position like that, where you could be looking at dudes who you might captain?
Yeah, and this is where the amount of cheapies across the game will come into, because if you get a stack of CT dub cheapies or forward cheapies or whatever, maybe you can pot it and go a bit strong in the halves. But as it stands for me, and good point from you, Max. You've started well this season, so good for you. But I would be linking them with a gun in the halves. Like, I wouldn't be looking to play any of them each week. So I'd be expecting them to make money, but points-wise on field, I wouldn't want to be relying on that. Ethan Sanders may kick goals for the Raiders. They have a few options. No real standouts, but they do have a few options in there, so that'll be a big one in his factor as well. Jonah Pezzett is available at 5'8", so as it stands, probably have Pezzett in one of those two, but again, there's competition at the Eels as well. All right, Maxie, that'll do us for the SC Playbook podcast, the first of the preseason. Good to scratch that itch and get one out of the way. We'll be back every week, going through to the end of the preseason. Beers and break-evens back this week as well. Subscriber podcast coming within the next week or two as well, and tons more across the SC Playbook preseason. Thank you, mate.
Pleasure. Hope the listeners have enjoyed it. Hopefully spark up a bit of conversation as well on the WhatsApp threads. Really looking forward to getting stuck in.
Fair chance the WhatsApp community is going to be popping off after this one, mate. Thanks for tuning in, guys.